Thank you, Professor Ebrahim Moosa. Very interesting and fascinating talk indeed. A lot of very important points which is being mentioned, at least for me. A few points which strike me include how to diagnose the problem, which is part of it is being summarized in the understanding of the theology of the empire that most Muslims are having now, and some of the solutions which is being provided. Part of it also includes the point of views of Al-Kawakibi on the importance of knowledge and how the lack of knowledge have caused us to move towards a society of despotism, and also as well the lack of ethics in our understanding related to Islam. To move our discussion further, I would like to invite our second speaker today, which is Professor Dr. Rashila Ramli. Professor Rashila Ramli is the Professor of Political Science and Director of the Institute of Malaysian and International Studies IKMAS UKM. Her areas of specialization are political development, human security, gender and politics, and international politics, focusing on global governance, including governance of Southeast Asia, South China Sea, and its implication on ASEAN. Without further delay, I would like to invite Prof. Rashila.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Dr. Ahmad Farouk, thank you very much for the invitation to our afternoon session here. I hope people at the back, right there. Hello. Okay. All right. I hope you can see the slides because I have quite a few slides to share with you, and I really appreciate being here. And this is not my first time being at our forum here, yeah, with the Islamic Renaissance France. And I am actually very, to begin the talk, after listening to Professor Ebrahim just now, I mean, he has put out a lot of things for us to share. But when Prof. Farouk called me about less than a week ago and asked me to be part of one of the panelists, I was concerned about the particular topic how to approach it. But when he mentioned to me about, let's talk a little bit about Islamophobia. So that was where I'm going to take us in this afternoon. Yeah. So what I'd like to do is actually, based on what has been mentioned by Prof. Ebrahim just now, we will talk about the fact that knowledge has no religion. Okay, so I'll take it from that particular angle and then do a bit of a deconstruction on Islamophobia. And as mentioned by Dr. Narimah just now, what are some possible ways that might be practical enough in terms of handling the issue of Islamophobia. So this is what I plan to do in the next, I think, 15-20 minutes that is being given to me. And along the way, touch upon a couple of things that has been mentioned by Prof. Ebrahim just now. Okay? So, just very basic definition, because when we talk about Islamophobia, it has been it's been there for a long time, but the most prominent definition came about in about 1997. Yeah, so it was defined as the dread, hatred, and hostility towards Islam and Muslim perpetrated by a series of close views. So these are things, some keywords we should keep in mind. Close views that attribute towards negative and derogatory stereotypes and beliefs to Muslims. Okay, and that came out of the Runnymede report, a challenge, Islamophobia, a challenge for all of us, 1997. You can trace that back. And another definition would be the fear of Islam and Muslim, as well as the dissemination, this is important, dissemination of such fear, whether by material produced, by pronouncements, as well made, or by actions taken. Now, who made the announcement, how are pronouncement being made, what kind of actions are being taken? These are the things that we should keep in mind when we talk about Islamophobia. And that particular definition came out of Anas al-Sheikh Ali in John Esposito and Ibrahim Khalil, the challenge of pluralism in the 21st century. That's the particular text, yeah? So I believe it was published in 2015. So this is the particular definition that we can at least keep at the back of our mind when we go through for today's discussion. Okay, so the basic argument is that Islamophobia is not the result of 9/11. Okay, similar to racism and anti-Semitism, Islamophobia has been evident throughout the centuries. Now, only post 9/11, Islamophobia is actually institutionalized. It becomes something of a mainstream instead of being in the fringe. It is a social construct through Eurocentric discourse. Construction is done through the politics of association and visual images, resulting in the politics of fear and revenge. So this is the take that I'm doing for this afternoon. Now, in deconstruction, we look at image perpetuation, we look at the politics of association, we look at even electronic jihad. Yeah? And because these are the things leading toward the politics of fear, splitting, the issue of splitting, as well as revenge. And in doing this particular, in preparing for this presentation, actually I tapped upon the expertise of a couple of my colleagues at IKMAS, Professor Noraini Muhammad Yusuf, who actually deals with the work on Occidentalism, post-colonial studies. So there is a group that deals with the issue of Islamophobia, but pretty much from the literature and arts perspective. And I think it is important to vary our sources of knowledge, because that will allow us to have a better understanding of the issue that we're dealing with. Now, there are two images here through literature and arts. The first image is actually a book or a depiction of Captain John Smith. I'm sure people are familiar with the movie of Pocahontas by Disney. Okay, so John Smith was the captain, and he wrote this book, which is called The True Travels, Adventures, and Observation by Captain John Smith. It is in 1630. Now we can say that this is the first popular fiction, pretty much, that pretty much bring about the thought on Islamophobia. Okay, even though it is an old text, but this kind of images brought about by writers, by settlers, by adventurers in the 16th century, 17th centuries, actually have the connotation of what is of a negative depiction, pretty much, of Muslim and the Islamic world. Now, on the right is actually an enlargement of a photo, not just a photo, but of a statue, which is called the Greek slave. All right. Now, the sculpture was actually done by Hiram Powers of this Greek slave, which has this entire narration about a young Christian virgin taken captured by a cruel heathen Muslim thugs. Okay, so this kind of a depiction actually portrays a very negative image of the Muslim, and it has started way back. Okay, it is just a matter of what kind of evolution this kind of imagery comes into place. Now, 20 years later, the anti-Muslim hatred has become more pervasive and entrenched, and especially in the UK compared to 20 years ago. This is another report that just came out recently. And the fact that the institutionalization of Islamophobia was brought about by the media, we also know that. And especially Fox, CNN, these are media that really brought about the issue of anti-Muslim into the mainstream. There are other, Okay, there is another text that I would like to share with you, which is called Rebounding by Jamila Kolokostronis. Now, this was written about after 9/11. Now, the text was about the main character, Joshua Adam, who is an American Muslim revert. And what has happened is that this guy who lives in America would have to adjust in being a Muslim in the American society. Now, the profiling that he received, being a Muslim, even though he is a white male, okay, from that moment he was accused of a terrorist, regardless of whatever the color of your skin is. And accused of terrorist act continues to color his public identity and any social engagement, even among fellow inmates when he was prison during that time, prison without being charged. Okay, so this kind of stories came about, and the fact that his situation brought about what is known as the politics of association. Politics association, although allowing for camaraderie between the members in a particular community, it has unwanted repercussions for Muslims in the 21st century. So, it would be good to have a read on rebounding as a particular text. Yeah. So other images that came about. So this is something I have mentioned earlier. Okay. So other images that came about, especially after 9/11, the portrayal of Islam being very negatively done, and the fact that the play on emotion is something that we need to take into consideration as well. Those the photo of these firefighters, for example, is to bring about compassion for a particular group, but not at the same time a negative connotation to others. Thus, in doing this, image creation and perpetuation of these images continues through the years. The manifestation of Islamophobia in the United States, for example, has also fuses racial and religious bias, largely because the stereotypical Muslim has been instructed as ominous figure, the bearded, dark-skinned, turban-wearing terrorist. This kind of stereotyping comes into play. The problem is that the production of Muslim as this visible archetype sustains and perpetuates negatively evaluated meanings about Islam and Muslim in the United States. Race, therefore, shapes and determines the perception of Muslims, which then inform and construct thinking about Muslim as others in a particular society. So these are works by Allen, 2010, that you can find. Now, in terms of politics, Islamophobia has become a useful tool, a tool for right-wing parties to mobilize electors in many European nation states. In the German election recently, there was the right-wing parties was actually saying something like, okay, these people are going to build more mosques, and that is actually a threat on Christianity. Those kind of statements are being perpetuated, and that brings about how it has become a useful tool for right-wing parties. So Islamophobia has become a kind of accepted racism, found not only on the margins of European societies, but also at the center. So when something's become palatable enough to be talked about during dinner with children, with the families and so on, then there is something which is towards a point of a crisis that we are looking at. More negative images based on internet-based websites that serve as online libraries and repository for jihadist literature, as platform for extremist preachers, and as forums for radical discourse. So these are the things, how it is being perpetuated, because information is so accessible. The problem is, to what extent do we have the knowledge to weigh these images and what kind of connotation they do bring, okay? And now with the electronic jihad that comes into place, where internet connectivity has come to play a more direct operational role for jihadi terrorist-related purposes. Yeah? And how do they do this? For inciting prospective cadres to action, for recruitment purposes, yeah, operatives and fighters, provide virtual training. You don't have to go to a camp now, you can do virtual training in tactical methods and manufacture explosive for terrorism financing, and for actual planning and preparation for specific terror acts. These are all been done, yeah, through electronic jihad. So you don't need to be physically there. People can be in different parts of the world, even different time zone, but trainings, even payments, yeah, through PayPal or whatever's dark web that is being used, this can happen. Yeah? So that leads to what, of course, the politics of revenge and fear. Yeah? So as a retaliation, if we are not using our brain to do it, then there are ways, you know, that you can see other images brought about by minority groups of extremists that would like to put forth the politics of revenge as well as to create more fear. And definitely, Islamophobia is an industry. It is an industry because it is a covert form couched in the intellectual arguments espoused by think tanks, commentators, even politicians. There are at least 7 charitable foundations which spend millions, billions between 2001 to 2009 to support the spread of anti-Muslim and anti-Islam rhetoric in the United States. I mean, these have been documented, so I'm just listing actually more than 7, yeah? There are about 8 here. You can look at more of these different foundations, not only in the US, but also in Europe. Yeah? But at the same time, what are the other Muslim countries, foundations which are supporting programs towards anti-Christianism, Christianity, and so on? I mean, you have to study both sides. It is not only on one side. Okay. So, what is the outcome of Islamophobia? Exclusion from economic and social and public life. There is also the discrimination in the blatant form of hate crimes and subtler forms of disparagement, as well as a perception that the religion of Islam has no common values with the West, that it is inferior to the West, a violent political ideology rather than a source of faith and spirituality. So these are some of the outcomes of Islamophobia. So what do we do about this? Hopefully towards the politics of reconciliation through acceptance. Now, in the book by John Esposito and Ibrahim Khalin, okay, the basis for the politics of reconciliation could be based on, they mentioned 3, but I think there should be maybe 4. If one would be geographical proximity, the fact that Muslims and the Westerners are actually living in close proximity. Number 2, similar spiritual reference. We know that, you know, Islam is the continuation of the Ibrahim's tradition as well as culture. Yeah, Ibrahimic tradition and culture. So similar spiritual reference, and there is also shared values. What is meant by that? There is no inherent conflict between Islam and modernity. Muslims are actually committed to pluralism and the right of people to choose their diversity, to also, to have the diversity. So with the shared value. And I think one that can be added, which is not in the text, is in terms of the sustainability of human race as it is. Because if we don't do that, having this conversation, having this dialogue that we have like right here, but to take it in a bigger realm, things are not going to get any better. So what are some of the possible action that could be taken? One would be emphasize on human security in relations to state security. It is always the state which is usually being looked into, the action of the state. But I think if we take it from human security perspective, this would be another way of repositioning the center. The center should be to the individuals, to the communities, instead of authoritarian states. Number 2, as mentioned by Prof. Ebrahim just now, the reform of the Islamic education, rework on the theology of empire. So this is something that needs to be done. Number 3, recognize intersectionality. I'll talk a little bit about after this. The fact that each of us carries with us a number of multiple identities actually. We might be Muslim, we might be women, we might be coming from we might be staying in a Western country, or whatever our position is. So intersectionality is an important aspect that can actually bring about greater Islamophobia. Stop racialization of Islam and all the discriminatory processes it entails. Okay. And there is another group of scholars who actually been working from the psychological association, psychology. They have been practicing what is called imagine context situation approach, where you actually try to put yourself in a person's position in order to have greater empathy instead of sympathy. So these are some of the actions that can be taken into being. And as I said, I would talk a little bit before I finish on intersectionality, because this is what has brought about a lot of issues that we have not been able to resolve. The ways that gender, race, class, sexuality work together that can create inequality. Okay, so it is an interlocking system of oppression, and this is known as the matrix of domination, where we actually try to put the subject in the center and analyze how gender, race, class, sexuality, and in this case disability, or even your religious, whatever religion that you profess, can actually create inequality and oppression. How belonging to multiple discriminated classes can mean that one's issues can either be amplified or it can actually be ignored. Okay, so these are areas that we would like to look further. So, in conclusion, Islamophobia has grown in intensity. Now, is it to the point of a crisis? A crisis is a time of intense difficulty where important decisions must be taken. Has it come to that level? Or have we passed it already without even knowing it? So these are the things that we need to look into. Intersectionality complicates the understanding of discrimination that Muslims do feel. And it is important, as a conclusion, it is important to be vigilant. Through activism and mastery of the internet is a must. It is of top priority, because that is where a lot of things, it can act as an equalizer both for good and bad. So we need to look into this kind of thing. So with that, I thank you for your time.